Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Hello. This is David Parra with AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection, with another very, very good show, very important subject, and great guest today. We have la doctora Elizabeth Ortiz de Valdez. We have Representative Tony Navarrete. We have Dr. Gabriel Escontrillas. We have Tisha Gonzalez, and we have David Martinez III. The show today is called The LGBT, Our Journey. And, you know, I want to, first of all, thank Dr. Gabriel Escontrillas for working with me during the whole week, just to trying to get an understanding of as to what to talk about in this show and how to frame it. And thank you, Dr. Escontrillas. It was very helpful. I really love the word journey. That one I came up with. I have to take credit for that. And I love the word journey because it is a journey. And I think it's not only on the part of the LGBT community, but on the non-LGBT community. It's a journey that we, the human beings, are having to travel together. And it's been rough, I think, for the most part, more rough than smooth. So we hope to continue to this conversation that hopefully will help all of us in this journey. Before we address some of the issues that we want to cover today, I want to say that AARP is a strong supporter, advocate of the LGBT community, and I have a few lines, if you will, from what we consider the AARP Statement of Values. And I would like to read it because not only that shows that AARP supports it, but I think the way they wrote it, it's very, very meaningful. It says, AARP's unwavering commitment to the LGBT community reflects our core belief in the dignity, worth, and potential of every individual. We reject discrimination based on a person's age, race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. We see diversity as a source of strength. For us, LGBT communities are a vital part of the quilt of American life. And you can find that in aarp.org/pride. And by the way, make a note of that website because we have a ton of information, especially when it comes to advocacy, laws. AARP is at the forefront of advocacy, as I'm sure many of you know. So I just wanted to read that because I think it not only declares what AARP stands is, but it captures a feeling that I think is very, very important to have. So once again, welcome. We will be talking about, again, the LGBT, Our Journey. Why don't we have each of you introduce yourselves and just give us your thought. How do you feel about this issue and even the fact that we invited you and you wanted to address? Maybe we can go this way, just go around. And make sure you get close to the mic, please.
Of course. So good morning, everyone, and thank you, David and AARP, for having us here today and gathering us all together to have a conversation around what it is to be LGBT, especially here in our state of Arizona. So my name is Gabriel Escontrillas Jr., and I identify as a gay male, and I am happily in a married relationship with my husband. Not partner anymore, it's husband. It's official. So even it's still new
So at
to
one
me.
point it was partner, and then some law came, and then now
That is correct. At some point you get the same rights as other people, and then that all changes. Go figure.
That was 2015. I think so.
I believe so because it was right before I got married in 2016. So I should really keep up with it a lot
June
more.
26th of 2015.
See. So no, as we think about how are we feeling around this topic, obviously, I'm always more than excited to have a conversation around it. I'm very optimistic. as far as where we're going. I think a lot of times we hear this term progressive, but the reality is it's really people becoming more respectful and more open-minded and more informed
Right.
of what our community really is composed of and who we all are as individuals. So definitely there's optimism in my life and how I like to perceive things. And
Good.
I'll pass it over to my dear friend Tisha.
All right.
Well, good morning. Thank you again, David, and thank you, Gabe, for the invitation to come here and talk about this. Very important, I know, to all of us and to everybody else out there. I identify as a lesbian. I am in a married relationship. I have a 2-year-old son at home. So the laws definitely are very important. I was able to get my name on the birth certificate, which is pretty amazing. But I also did officially adopt him as well. So, and I get the question a lot of times, like, why do you need to adopt? You're on the birth certificate. But it's very important for to kind of close that loophole, the law loophole, because the birth certificate doesn't always necessarily have any kind of real binding as far as if anything were to happen. So to being able to adopt him has really tightened that up so that I know that nothing can ever happen if anything does happen. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm happy to be here and to discuss these issues.
Thank you very much.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having me, and thank you to AARP for bringing up this important topic. My name is David Martinez III. I identify with he, him, his pronouns.
Can you
And-
say that again?
Sure. I prefer he, him, his pronouns, so
He-
male pronouns.
He,
Him,
him,
and his.
and his.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's something that we practice with the Human Rights Campaign just so people can self-identify and no other assumptions are made of somebody's gender identity. So that's how we introduce ourselves. But I am the proud co-chair of the Human Rights Campaign here in Arizona, and I serve on the National Board of Governors for the Human Rights Campaign, which is the largest civil rights organization working for LGBTQ equality in America. And here in Arizona, we have a great team of volunteers that's implementing the mission and vision of HRC for full equality for every American. And I am proud to do so as a native Arizonan, as a proud gay Latino that was raised in rural southern Arizona, one of 6 kids, working class family, Catholic. So it was not always easy to be both, but you certainly can, and can be accepted in parishes just as I have here in Phoenix. And my journey is I think reflective of a lot of gay Latinos here in Arizona and throughout the country, frankly. And as Gabe said, I think it's all about people being more aware and being more open and coming out and realizing that you have a friend and a coworker or a neighbor and they identify as LGBTQ and they're great people.
Right, right.
So I think that's part of that journey, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you.
Great. And again, I'm really happy to be here as well. So thank you again, David, for the invitation, and Gabriel for being here, because I'm really excited that we're having this conversation around LGBT. Again, my name is Tony Navarrete, state representative representing the West Valley, and I'm one of 4 members of our LGBT caucus. So we have 4 gay individuals in the legislature. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's really important to hear these conversations and hear folks on the ground, hear from experts on how we can better serve the LGBT community, or in other words, our community, because it is our responsibility as members in the legislature to really take these issues and run with them. Right. Because still to today in Arizona, you can still be fired based on your sexual orientation. And that is not
Wait,
okay.
Can you repeat that? Legally?
Legally, yes.
Wow.
And again,
so it's in the books of law that an employer can fire you.
Correct. So I think for us, it's really important to continue to advance the work of trying to create those protections here in the state of Arizona so that there isn't discrimination in the workplace. And it's about, going back to the mission of AARP, making sure that everyone has a dignity and the worth that each individual deserves. So for me, as a legislator, that is my goal, to make sure that I am supporting those missions and making sure that we are having these honest conversations. And, it's okay if people are unaware of them, but really try to take some time to dig into some of the issues that are important in the community.
Right. Thank you, Representative Navarrete, and an old friend of mine.
Did you have to say old?
I said old
You're
friend.
in trouble. You're in trouble.
Well,
David.
how else can I say it? This longtime friend. That's even better. Well, la doctora Elizabeth Ortiz de Valdez, and just share your initial remarks. How do you feel about this issue? And you've had a lot of exposure, experience to all this, and I really appreciate that we had the opportunity to have you.
Yes, and I'm really honored to be among my dear friends. I'm an heterosexual woman, 72 years old, so I represent another generation. I'm a psychiatrist, and I have been in this journey, I think, for all my life. But as a psychiatrist, I saw the evolving even of terminology. So it's just like 40 years ago that the being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or questioning, it was not in existence back then. But it was declassified as a mental health disorder. So under the DSM, that is the DSM, it comes from Diagnosis and Statistics Manual. So you can see the evolving terminology and how it was. That's from the psychiatrist point of view. As an activist in a Latino community, I face the struggle, the double stigma of people diagnosed with HIV and being gay, and how it was an incredible. We have come along so much, but there's so much to do. We still have that. So I have been, I have had the honor to have as my friends even interracial couples that are gay, where he's a doctor, his spouse now is a nurse, one Latino, one Anglo, and 50 years of now officially married. The inspiration of another bisexual couple and a gay woman, or lesbian woman, talking about terminology, but they are going to celebrate the 40th anniversary, and the inspiration that these couples, you are very new in your relationships, you are pollitos, you are you are young people, but really to have the honor to be included, because sometimes, and this is said with a lot of respect, the exclusion of heterosexuals because we do not understand the struggles. I think we need to work together.
Of course. And, we're going to be going on a break real quick. And just wanted to, every week when I put together a show, I have to do a lot of reading and research and asking questions and stuff. And we're going to refer to LGBT just because back in a long time ago, obviously they did not use this term, but we're just going to borrow it. And please understand that. But this concepts, this realities, have existed as long as human beings have existed. And what we want to highlight is just the way human beings have perceived them, understand them, and how they have reacted to them. But if you do a little bit of research, you'll find, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, China, Japan, even the American Indians. You have all this, realities among us, and we'll take a break. And but again, they have been with us. It's just the way people perceive them and react to them, and how that has evolved. We will take a break, and we will be right back.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you. Thank you very much for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. I am David Parra, and we are having a very, very important conversation on the LGBT, our journey. And a journey it is. It has been and will continue to be. It's a journey. And human beings, I mean, anything that is new will always, generate a reaction. And for the most part, it's a negative reaction. So I think it has to do with understanding. The more we understand, the better our reaction will be. So can we just to say a few words about how these realities have been with us forever, pretty much?
Sure, I'll hit on that a little bit. I think it's fascinating because LGBT history is just general history, actually. The community, there has been signs and photos and symbols of LGBT relationships, very loving relationships throughout history, even beyond just American history. And especially across cultures and religions. And if you take, for instance, the Native communities often revered the transgender community and revered them tremendously as two spirits and just people with great energy and spirit. Of course, that's changed a lot in the last century, but the movement really began to escalate, and LGBT history really started to cement itself as a community in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement. And it all started here in America around 1969 with the Stonewall riots, where the police in New York City raided a popular LGBT establishment called the Stonewall Inn, which President Obama actually designated as a national monument, a historic site for America. And it was a police raid. So the LGBT history actually started as a story of police brutality against the LGBT community, which I think is very relevant and timely in our days today, and especially the drag queens and people of color, queer people of color, really began the movement here in America. Since then, we've really escalated tremendously. Organizations like the Human Rights Campaign were founded 37 years ago and have been on the forefront of the movement, fighting for equality at every level of government, including the courts, at the state legislatures, and even down at the city levels. So we have come a long way, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, with a lot of advancements like marriage equality. But as Representative Navarrete said, especially here in Arizona, you can still be fired, you can still be kicked out of a public space just for being LGBT or for the perception of being LGBTQ. So we have made a lot of strides, but we have a lot of work to do. And especially now we have an administration in the White House that is hell-bent on rolling back that progress. Mm-hmm. So we really have to continue to fight for what we have been fighting for in recent history, but can't forget the shoulders that we stand on.
Yeah. Well, that shows clearly that, again, these realities are just part of human life. But here again, it's just anything new. Anything you don't understand, it will generate a reaction, and a lot of times not a positive one. So I think conversation is so critical. You know, I was born in Mexico in the state of Nayarit, and it's a kilometer long with a half a kilometer wide. It was a very small town, and there was a gay man. I vividly remember as a child, and he was just there. He was extremely helpful to the town. He was the man who would fix the temple. He was, people recognize this man as like a smart, servicial. I mean, like, it's just unbelievable. But again, I just grew up as a child. I remember him. And again, it was kind of normal to see him. I didn't think anything of it, but I was aware. People made even jokes. As we know, there's a lot of jokes that are made about people, not only LGBTs, but people you don't understand. You're always going to be making jokes. Why don't we transition to terminology? I think as I was speaking with Dr. Gabriel Contreras, I had to ask him, so how do I say this? Is this proper? Will somebody get mad if I say this word? So I think it's important to kind of help us to understand terminology. I know LGBT stands for?
So LGBT, you would have lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered.
Right.
But I know I can look to David to my left because I know he can expand on it. Because right now, especially with the younger generations, there's really been an expansion of self-expression and self-identity. And I think it's only fair to make sure that we capture as much of our community as possible. I always tell people I'm always very honest. I'm back in my day. Take it whenever you want to say.
You're a little bit more old school, kind of.
Back in my day,
Okay.
I fit into.
How old are you?
I'm closer to 40 than I am to 30 now. So.
He wasn't ready for that question.
I'll be 37 this year.
Okay.
But I say that
we're
because,
still young. But the millennials, they're a new breed, right? They're free thinkers,
Yes,
we
are.
so I turn to my left because I was born right on 1980 and I don't identify with a millennial.
Okay.
So I stay old in my way
No,
of
but
thinking.
you seem to have that comments related to the Q. So I was hesitant to use the Q because the LGBTQ is preferred by some.
Well, then we also have to be very mindful that the Q not always necessarily stands for queer. A lot of our organizations have used it as questioning. So sometimes you'll get an LGBTQQ, sometimes you'll get an LGBTQIA for intersex and asexual, and then there's pansexual. But yes, I mean, sometimes it's really based more in a generation on what they deem to be appropriate or acceptable based on where they were in their journey. And I think that's where queer can kind of be kind of complicated.
So if someone refers to you as gay, you would be fine? Or gay man, or either or?
I personally would be fine. But again, it's because that's my own self-identity and how I identify.
Are you saying that some might prefer not, that you don't address that directly and just use another way?
It is, and I mean, I don't want to dominate this part, so anyone can jump in at any time.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is it's always going to come down to what is a person's preference.
Right.
And a lot of individuals don't necessarily deem to be that the one thing they are is to be considered based on their sexual identity. For instance, I first and utmost always consider myself a Latino American or Mexican American.
Okay.
I'm also raised Catholic. So there's a lot of different characteristics that I have and a lot of things that make up who my being is.
So you prefer that people don't just take your sexual orientation as your identity per se. You want them to see you as the whole
Gabriel.
person.
Well, as Gabriel, and I
Right.
think it's just by once you meet my husband, I'm not shy about introducing my husband to anyone. So you're clearly going to connect the dots and you're going to realize it, and that's okay.
Yeah. Tisha, how do you, terminology-wise, how do you feel what's comfortable, not comfortable?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp as Gabe. I'm a few years older than him.
Okay.
So I'm a little old school too. I mean, lesbian is fine.
That's
Gay
not
woman is
offensive to
fine.
you?
No, I
Okay.
don't find it offensive at all. And like Gabe said, it's a matter of the individual's journey and what they've gone through. And I think because now the newer generation, they are expanding more on how they want to be identified. They want to be identified using certain pronouns or certain words that they want to be used to identify. I don't have a problem with someone calling me gay or someone calling me a lesbian. I know dyke gets thrown in there sometimes, and it can go kind of either way too. But I don't get offended very easy. So, if somebody, does say something, it's probably because they don't understand or they don't know.
May I assume that having gone through this process, you become more understanding even of the ignorant ones, such as myself? Or that it depends on the person. I don't know. For some reason, I kind of feel that once you go through the process, being such a difficult process, that you come to a point where you will understand those that may not know how to use the terminology properly, and you kind of understand that and doesn't hurt you as much.
Sure. And I think that comes with how comfortable you are with yourself.
Right. That has to be the key.
I think as long as you're comfortable with who you are, you can kind of step back and say, okay, well, they don't understand, they don't get it, so
Right.
you can let that slide. I mean, sure, it hurts, I mean, you're like, oh, but yeah, I think it has to do with just your own comfort level with yourself.
David, terminology wise, what can you share with us?
Yeah, I think you mentioned, David, just the ignorance that you have, and I think a lot of times it depends on the spirit in which it's coming from. So if you get somebody like you're willing to learn and grow as part of your own journey with the LGBTQ community. And if somebody would come to me in a more hate-inspired way and be like, "Are you gay?" then I might not be so comfortable with identifying as gay if I don't feel safe. And unfortunately, that happens far too often in our community. So I think it comes with how the question is approached or how you would like to identify. But it's all a self-identification. And I think that as an organization, the Human Rights Campaign does use the Q as queer. We just added that as part of our mission.
That in your realm is positive.
It is.
You don't take it offensive because it could, I mean, in some instances, it could be offensive to some. But in your circle, you have adopted it as something just like the other acronym letters.
Yeah, we thought that it was important as an organization to be all-encompassing of our community and be inclusive as well for people who do identify as queer. And I think for the Latino community, it's really interesting because you start hearing the term Latinx.
And that's what I wanted to. Can you elaborate just a bit? We're about a couple minutes for another break, but just on Latinx. And I was wondering about that too because I've heard it.
Yeah. So I think it goes a lot to not putting people in boxes, especially when it comes to gender and just male or female. It really is a non-binary system. So I think in the Latino community, gender neutral really it moves beyond just the Latino Hispanic, which we used in the past to include both masculine and feminine identities. So it includes identities outside of that binary gender. So Latinx is all-encompassing and allows somebody to be a bit more comfortable with how they identify.
And that comes from not using a gender like Latina or Latino, so you kind of make it neutral by saying Latinx.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Tony?
So, as someone who's many years younger than everyone here, I'm totally.
So you are you're a millennial.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Dr. Valdez is giving. It's starting to hit me on the side here, but I think that this conversation, in terms of terminology and in terms of comfort level, is something to dig into more because as a person of color. As someone who is also grown up in a very low-income community, as someone who is also gay, you begin to see the world through different lenses. And I think through the different lenses that we all experience, I think that is a way that, and it's a responsibility that we have to be much more open and accepting of different differences in people. So for me, that's why I've always been very committed to making sure that we are constantly being open about someone's sexuality, someone's belief, someone's understanding of things. And one thing that Mr. Martinez mentioned is that when you're talking about terminology and when you're addressing someone as gay, dyke, lesbian, queer, you really have to be careful about where that's coming from. And I think, trying to figure out someone's intentions during the whole entire process is extremely important. But I think, when you start digging into these issues, you're going to start uncovering a lot of our LGBT community that has faced discrimination, a lot of our people of color that have faced discrimination. So as that, that has effects on our our psychology, our well-being, how we behave, in certain settings, and yeah. So there's a lot of opportunity for the LGBT community to continue to grow, an opportunity for the general public to be more understanding and welcoming. Because at the end of the day, we're in this world together.
That's right.
This is nothing new, and we just have to learn how to engage with one another and respect our differences and cherish what we have in common.
Thank you. We're going to have to go on break, and we'll come back and have an opportunity with La Doctora Ortiz. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. We will be right back.
Welcome to AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is David Parra with AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. We are having a great conversation on LGBT, our journey. And we are going to continue the conversation. Dr. Elizabeth Ortiz de Valdez, your turn. And then we're going to switch it to the acceptance process. How was it for you to accept who you were, and then that was hard enough, and then having to face the family, and then society, and then the world. So we're going to talk about that, but first with la Dr. Ortiz
from
de Valdez.
The world of the family context. Before we go into terminology, I really would like to set the tone for our audience that we sometimes get caught in identifying the gay, lesbian, bisexual, questioning or queer community for their sexual orientation. And it's a call for you too, that we are human beings, that we have our heart, our body, we have our sexuality, we have our spirituality, we have our minds. And it's not about being your sexual orientation, is who you are as a human being.
So you're saying that we need to make a transition to the broader, the whole person, as opposed to just focusing on one element of a person.
And we need to understand that process because it's part of the human being's process. So let's go into terminology, but in the context of the community being human beings that have their minds, their hearts, their bodies, their spirits,
extremely
and their
important.
sexuality. Yes.
How dreadful it would be to eliminate all the qualities of a person just because you're focusing on one.
Yes.
That is amazing. Thank you for those comments. Those are very, very important. So in regarding the acceptance process, I can only imagine how difficult for many. And I think the situation has improved over time, and it will continue to improve, and that makes it perhaps a little easier. But still, I mean, anyone that wants to jump in the conversation, just tell us how it was for you to identify who you were, accept it, and then having to come out, as I think the term that they use is come out, right? Go for it. Anyone.
For me, it was a really interesting experience. Like many of you here, I grew up in the church, very active, was there several times a week. So a part of me, had this...
Now, when you say church, is that Catholic or Protestant?
It's a Protestant church.
Okay.
Although my family's Catholic. So for me, I've always kind of, believed in the higher being and the fact that, we're created in their image and he's full of love. So my church, I could tell when I was getting ready to come out, I can tell that there was some uncomfortableness around me. And one of the things that I just simply told one of the leaders is that, look, if I'm going to be straight, then I want to be a proud straight person. But if I'm going to be gay, I'm going to be a proud gay person, because either way, it doesn't deter who I am as an individual. So when I first initially told my family, I had actually told my immediate family, because I told them if they accept me, great. If they don't, this is where the buck stops. So if they accept me, then I don't care what anyone else says. So
was it a big struggle or not?
Oh, absolutely. When you try to hide things, or when you're living a life in secret, it's never healthy. It's never healthy at all.
Psychologically,
and that's for anything.
Right,
it can be for anything.
Right.
That's not just the LGBT issue. It's don't keep anything in secret, because it would fester, it will grow, and it would eat you alive.
Right.
So for me, I had to tell my family, and
how was that?
I put him in a room. I think I made it more dramatic than I needed to, and I think a lot of sometimes we make things a little more dramatic than they are. But I came out and I told them that this is who I am. I was ready to be disowned by my family, and just move on.
Just getting ready for the worst.
Yeah, getting ready for the worst. And one of the first reactions, for the most part, everyone's like, we still love you, blah, blah, blah. You're still our brother. You're still my son.
Did you notice a process even in accepting you? I mean, you're their family,
yes.
but it has to be, right?
Yes.
Even though they love you, they accept you, but just a
absolutely.
transition of fully embracing you.
Yeah, they could probably use some counseling. It's probably my mom the most.
Okay.
She loves me, unconditionally, but she, I think, was just having just a difficult time that, her oldest son, the firstborn boy on both sides,
Right.
And he's gay, and, he's just, what do I do with that?
Right.
My sister told me, she's like, well, I still love you, just don't become a girl. And I told her, well, if I wanted to do that, I will do that, but that's not who I am. I'm a gay man. Right. So it's just really at that point, it's really an education campaign with your life,
right.
On how you're bringing in your family. And the person I found to be my biggest advocate within my family, because that's important to have when someone's coming out, is to have an advocate within the family, because there will be people that talk behind your back,
right.
And that was my grandmother, this conservative Catholic woman, housewife, just very, conservative. She became my biggest champion and did not let any of my uncles, aunts, cousins say anything negative. And I thought that was just, mind you, I had a really good coming out experience. It doesn't always happen that way, but I've just been really fortunate to have that experience.
Perfect. Great experience. Thank you. Who's next?
Sure. I'll tell a little bit of my story. And I think in telling my journey of coming out, I'll talk more about the process of coming out for others. And I think it's important for those in the LGBTQ community to realize that it's a coming out process for our allies as well. And we wouldn't be able to do what we do without
What's an
our
ally?
allies. An ally is like the good doctor over here who identifies as heterosexual, a straight person who is a friend of the community.
So I could be an ally.
Yes.
And I am.
Exactly. There you are. Perfect. And one of my strongest allies is my dad. So when I first came out to him when I was a junior in high school, he told me verbatim, "You're not going to start dressing like a girl, are you?" And I could remember it vividly, just sitting at the end of his bed and him telling that. And I'm like, this is not what it means to be a gay man. But then a year later, he attended, I earned a scholarship to become the first person in my family to go to college, and they were really proud. And that scholarship just happened to be from an organization called PFLAG, which is the Parents, Friends of Lesbians and Gays. Mm-hmm. And my parents attended that reception, including my dad. So it was a process for him, and he's a hardworking man. He picked cotton in the fields for most of his life.
De los meros machos.
He's so machismo, it's crazy. But the coming out process is for him as well. I am a person of the Roman Catholic faith as well, and when I moved to Phoenix from Southern Arizona and started attending St. Mary's Basilica, I remember for my first confession, I felt compelled to confess, even though I didn't think it was bad, to my father that I was gay. And he said, as my penance, that I should look in the mirror and say 3 times, "I love you, I love you, I love you." And this is a Roman Catholic priest, they're Franciscan friars, so it's a bit more progressive. But nonetheless, to have that validation from a person of faith is really important. And I just want to say that it's often not an easy process. And it's important to know that you're not alone. And if you are in a situation where the person that you're coming out to isn't accepting, there are people out there that love you, and you're not alone, and seek help if you do need that.
Right. We have about 3 minutes. We probably can get one more. Would you mind?
Yeah, no, yeah. I'll tell my story. So I've always known from I could remember having any sort of attraction to another person that I was gay.
Okay. And that's what I was going to get to, because, I mean, in Spanish, there is this concept called o nacen o se hacen, right? Mm-hmm. So that is very important to highlight, because there is that kind of concept. So, sure. I mean, you're saying that from the early on, you knew who you were. I
absolutely knew who I was. So the coming out process for me was a little difficult for my family. I was also raised in a very Catholic upbringing. My parents had a very hard time in the beginning. My dad, he left and drove a few miles south to to be with his family and just kind of let it all out. Like, what am I to do? You know, what's going on? And he had a very deep conversation with his older sister, and she was a great advocate. She sat down with him and said, look, she's still your daughter. You still love her. And just so you know, there's other family members in our family who are gay, and it's not a big deal. My mom cried for a long time. I think she didn't know what it meant. I think she probably felt like she didn't know what it meant, what it was going to do to me in my life, you know, what I was going to go through, the struggles that I was going to go through. So it took them several years for them to finally come together and accept who I am. And I've been with my wife now going on 16 years, and they embrace her. They treat her like a daughter. We have a 2-year-old son now, and he is a grandson. You know, so it's very, you know, normal now.
It becomes very normal after
a little while. And they're great. I mean, they've been fantastic and very loving and very supportive. So
wow.
It started off rough, but it's, you know, luckily it's gone great. So
we're going to come to Dr. Contreras after the break, if you don't mind. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. We're going to go on our short break, and we'll be back.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. We are talking about the LGBT, our journey, and again, a journey it is for all of us. But it's just from talking about it, it's so helpful. And I am sure that the testimonials of people who have gone through it, for those that perhaps are out there just struggling with coming out, I'm sure this will be very helpful. Dr. Gabriel Contreras, it's your turn. How was that experience for you?
Well, let's see. I think as Tisha, I think it's really important to really acknowledge the fact that it's not like one day we woke up and said, guess what? I'm gay today. It really is, at least for my own personal story too, as far back as I can remember, I knew there was something different. I knew there was something that set me apart from what turned out to be my heterosexual friends and some also homosexual friends, even as early as a child. And it was interesting for me because over the years, my mother would actually ask. I think a lot of people sometimes have to deal with this. You get all worked up and you're going to come out, and then your parents are like, well, we're glad you found out, but we've kind of known you're gay. We kind of knew it, but thanks. Thank you for... So I think this whole coming out and the acceptance piece really starts with accepting yourself.
Now, this is a very important point, that so there is some signs, if you will.
Some people like to really point more towards like mannerisms or characteristics of that nature. But the reality is, if you're a young boy and you're staring off at a boy, chances are that's a clear indication. Same thing for a girl potentially. Or if you're a bisexual boy and you're looking both ways, then your parents are really confused there because they're like, which way might he be going? But it's, I think people try and look for things. I know sometimes I find myself also as I'm around people that are still developing, I kind of sometimes I'm like, okay, am I stereotyping them? Or is this really something that's happening? So I think I always have to check myself and be very careful that I'm not boxing someone into what I think is.
Yeah. So your experience, how was it? So basically, going to your parents was not as difficult?
Oh, no, it was.
Oh, it was?
You never met my mother. God bless her now. But it was, and my mother passed away, I think it was a couple of months after my wedding. And I think just hearing from my family how happy she was even to that very moment, because I think this entire process for her, it really started more for her. She had to deal with it while I was in college. And her biggest concern was, and her biggest fear was, are you going to be safe? Even my mother always spoke to, well, be careful with HIV. I'm all like, Mom, HIV is not just an LGBT problem. I hate to tell you that. You know, you should go tell my older brother the same thing and my sister. Like, it doesn't just concern me. But for her, it was really like, how is this life going to be? And I had to really explain to my mom, like, Mom, I want to get married. At some point, I want to start a family. So, unfortunately, you have to help them normalize it in their own reality. Because I think we're all socialized from an early on stage. So I had to, at one point, put myself in my mom's shoes and really think about, she's been socialized for 70-some years to assume this is how my life was going to be. And now she has to deconstruct all of her thinking and now
That's a
evolve
good way
around
to
mine.
put it. Deconstruct. Is that what you said? It is a very important term. I think we all have to go through some deconstruction of our lives with so many elements of our society, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll use the word normal, but I consider it more accepting. But it's still strange to me. Like, I just had breakfast yesterday with my sister and my nephews, and they see my husband who was running late, and they're all like, "Oh, there comes our uncle." And I was like, "Who are you talking about?" And then I'm like, "Oh yeah, my husband. You're talking about my husband. That would be your uncle. Thanks."
And you know, I've always believed this, but nothing like the past 10 years. There's nothing more precious than freedom, than liberty for a human being to be whatever that person prefers, desires to be. I think it's a great, one of the greatest treasures of being a human being is you have the freedom. And I've always believed this, but nothing like in the past, say, 10, 15 years, because we're all going through a deconstruction and a transformation of our thinking and feelings. Thinking or thoughts shape your feelings. So how you think, it will affect how you feel. So now, how about so you came out to the family and then to society. How was that?
Actually, I kind of did it all over the place. First, it was really with my friends. I worked with a lot of females when I was a student worker at ASU, and all the girls wanted to know, like, are you gay? And then finally, like, yes, I'm gay. And they're like, okay, because we all thought you were gay. So it really helped because they're some of my closest friends. But even in high school, I started coming out because one of my best friends, he identified as gay. So slowly, it just kind of started unraveling towards where I started building a community and a support group of other people that either understood what I was going through or they were going through it themselves.
Great. Before we finish, I want to mention that there is a website. There's all kinds of websites out there for the LGBT, but I wanted to recommend Honor 41, honor41.org. And the only reason is because they have a Trailblazers. There are videos of those that were recognized, and it's very, very good to watch those videos, especially the non-LGBT community, because that's very educational. Actually, there is even one in those videos that was honored. I think his name is it Nico Santos? Right? Nico Santos. So anyhow, I would like to recommend. And then we have Sage, right? We're familiar with Sage, correct? And Sage, let me see, it's sageusa.org, and that has to do more for the older adults, that face so many issues with caregiving, housing issues, employment, just because of their sexual orientation. And moving into that realm, we only have a few more minutes. How about moving from social to legislative, meaning socially, yes, you come out, you're accepted, but then there's some laws that, unless they're changed, you will continue to experience lots of difficulties. So, what can we say about now in the realm of legislation?
Sure. The lived experiences of too many LGBTQ community members in America is that on Sunday we have the right to get married, and we can share that special moment with the person that we love and want to spend the rest of our lives with and grow a family with. And then that could be on Sunday, and on Monday you can go to work and be fired for putting your wedding picture on your desk. So the Human Rights Campaign and many other LGBTQ organizations across the country have been working really hard to protect those rights that we were able to get over the past 10 years. But unfortunately, there is a movement alive in America that is hell-bent on reversing that progress. So we are working really diligently, both proactively and unfortunately too many times on the defense. So proactively, we've introduced every Congress now what's called the Equality Act, which amends the Civil Rights Act to include protections for the LGBTQ community, so that we cannot be discriminated in any way on the basis of our sexual orientation, gender identity, or sex. And these would be the same guarantees of protections just for minorities, people of color, veteran status, and existing protections. So this would just be setting the bar equal for the LGBTQ community. And I'm proud to say that we have a great co-sponsors of legislation here in Arizona, including Congressman Ruben Gallego and Congresswoman Kirsten Sinema. So we have a lot of work to do because we only have 240 sponsors of that legislation at the federal level, and we, of course, need 635. But I'm happy to say that sponsorship list also includes Republicans, and we need those Republicans to stand up for our freedoms as well. And that's why the Human Rights Campaign has really launched an unprecedented campaign called HRC Rising. And it's the largest investment in building the grassroots of the LGBT community in our 37-year history of the Human Rights Campaign. It is a $26 million investment in key states, including here in Arizona, where organizers will be hired leading up to the 2018 elections to fight for those protections and against anti-LGBT and anti-equality candidates and supporting pro-equality candidates and initiatives. So I'm really, really proud that HRC is making this move here in Arizona because, unfortunately, there are too many people that want to reverse the progress that we've made.
Yeah. Anything, Representative Navarrete, at the state level?
Yeah, well, one thing before I get into the state level, I do want to applaud a lot of the groups, not only the local groups, but also the national groups that are really the ones driving the movement. And as an elected official as a state representative, it is my responsibility to make sure that we are hearing those concerns, hearing those recommendations on how we can make Arizona better. One of the ways that we want to make Arizona better is to make sure that we are introducing legislation that is going to provide medically accurate sex education for our young people. If you don't understand yourself and your body, you're not getting that acceptance even within our high school curriculum, then we need to change that so that they feel dignified as being individuals. The other one is making sure that we have those protections under the law so you cannot be discriminated against or fired simply for loving someone who is the same sex as you. Right. And the other thing is that we have to pay real close attention to is our detention centers. We have several detention centers here in Arizona, and a lot of our transgender communities and our LGBT communities are often victims of sexual abuse within these facilities. So I think it's extremely important that we are working with not only our national counterparts, but also our local counterparts to make sure that we are talking about the issue, making it more relevant. And one last thing that I want to say is that earlier this year in the legislature, we had Republicans and Democrats speaking up, standing up, saying that they are ready to fight for LGBT.
Excellent.
community.
Great news. I don't want to run out of time and not give you a last opportunity. Doctora Elizabeth Ortiz Valdez, final thoughts?
Well, I think as representative or in this discussion of the heterosexual community, it's our duty to support all these legislations.
Definitely.
It's not just for the gay
Right.
community. We need to support every legislation that looks for equality.
Definitely. We're basically running out of time. I mean, I have at least a couple of takeaways. One is liberty, freedom. Every human being is just free, and they have to treasure, and we all have to treasure the freedom that every human being has. And the other thing that I take away is look at the whole person. Why are you going to miss out on 99.99% of a person just by looking at that little element that we all have, right? And so I hope this conversation was helpful for everyone, and I promise that we will do more shows on this issue. I think it was more of an introductory program. So Thank you so much for joining us. This was AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. See you next week.
Arizona Hispanic Connection.